I'm certain of that. And in addition to that, by doing them in this particular phase of the day, not necessarily at the same time. I mean, if you want to be very habitual and you want to do, the exercise or the sunlight viewing always at the same time, or you want to do, you want to drink your caffeine always at the exact same time, that's fine. But by placing them in this broader window of 0 to 8 hours after waking, what you're doing is you're creating task bracketing. You're making it such that your nervous system will predict when you are going to lean in against limbic friction in order to perform particular types of habits. And this is very different than saying, I'm always going to run or I'm always going to study from 10 to 12 a.m. every morning. That's great. And if you can do that, terrific. But the literature indicates that people who do that, who are very rigid about when they do things, tend, because of context dependence, to not necessarily stick to those habits over time. Some people do, but many, many people don't. So think about the hardest habits to form and the habits that you most want to form that are hardest for you to adopt and to maintain. And I highly suggest placing those somewhere within this phase 1 of 0 to 8 hours after waking. Now, of course, some of the things I listed out, sunlight viewing, exercise, cold exposure, caffeine, fasting, those might be the actual habits themselves. But here I realize, or I want to acknowledge that many people, including myself, are doing some or all of these things already. And many people, including myself, are trying to adopt new habits that don't fall into the category of just trying to set your overall state. Again, norepinephrine, dopamine, and all these neural systems will be greatly elevated in this 0 to 8 hours after waking. However, the other things I mentioned, sunlight exposure, exercise, cold exposure, caffeine, fasting, if that's for you, or if you're eating during that phase, eating things that contain some or elevated levels of tyrosine, maybe supplementing alpha-GPC or L-tyrosine, etc. All of those things further facilitate the neurochemistry and therefore the state of mind that's going to be ideal for leaning into limbic friction and overriding that limbic friction so that you can regularly perform that habit. What we're really talking about here is leveraging neural systems in order to help you make it more likely that you're going to be able to engage and maintain a particular habit. So what I'm referring to as phase 1 of each day is useful for acquiring certain habits. But there are other phases of the day, and those turn out to be useful for acquiring other types of habits.